Because it's freaking me the fuck.
No, hey, listen, all right?
The views and opinions expressed by the guests of Sasquatch Experience do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the hosts, sponsors, or affiliates of the Sasquatch Experience. As always, listener discretion is advised.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Does a legend walk among us, lurking in the forests of our world?
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. Looks like a man. I don't know what it was.
For over 15 years, we've talked with scientists, researchers, investigators, and witnesses, trying to gain insight and proof around the existence of this mysterious entity.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gio!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Join us as we continue into the investigation of the Sasquatch Experience. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sasquatch Experience. That's right, we're back. We're live. Sean Forker, Henry May, James Baker, and Vance Nesbitt. Vance is there at some point. He's there. And Henry's also there. Henry, wave to the audience, would you?
Yeah, especially our radio audience. That would be great.
All right, anyhow. You know,
I always said you had a face for radio.
This show's also a podcast, so those who aren't able to enjoy the live cast can go on.
Oh, please.
And, listen to us, at least in audio form, though all of us having a face, and he disappeared again. You know, it's never a live show without some sort of issue going on, but we're just glad to be here this week. It's been about 3 weeks since we've done a show. Just a programming note, the last show is available on Facebook in the Sasquatch Experience page. It's just not a podcast. I thought the quality was a little poor. A little poor quality. And if James Baker could make any more noise,
get the snowflake right off your forehead, buddy. That is
Mark of the beast.
Thanks.
Tonight's show topic, the paranormal question, right, guys?
Right.
I think it's going to be an interesting discussion point as we start wrapping up the year. But sad note, we do have to, for the love of Christ, stay in one position for 5 seconds.
Or get some
WD-40 or something, for the love of God.
Sorry.
We lost Linda Godfrey last week. Well-known author, respected researcher, just very sad. When we lose an incredible part of the community, the cryptid community, it's always rough. But someone like Linda, who was, a mainstay, someone a lot of us looked up to, very sad. So rest easy, Linda. Thank you for all your years of research and friendship. And we'll see you again sometime. Hopefully not so soon, but we'll see you again sometime. We have a little bit of the Diddy in the News program about that. Losing a lot of friends this year, guys. It's sad. I know it's part of life, but it seems these last couple of years we've lost more than our fair share, don't you think?
A little bit.
But, we're not going to go down and be sad because, we have a lot to be enjoying about.
No, this is true, but you know what? I try to think of it this way, and it took me a little while, especially after Linda's passing. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it's been a rough year for all that. We lost Butch at the beginning of 2022, Butch Wachowski, and the effects of that are still felt by some of us on the day to day. It was really funny for those of us that are, our friends on our social media. Do follow us. I have hit, guys, the worst creative block I've ever experienced in my life. Whether
You
it's
can tell
coming
by
up
the
with a
shirt
topic
you're
for a
wearing.
show, yeah. Whether it's a topic for the show, or it's a something for the book we're trying to get out there. I just can't manage to muster a single creative thought. So Brian Bowden, good friend of mine, fellow podcaster, posted on there, WWBS, right? What would Butch say? And he'd tell me to get my ass out in the woods and have a kielbasa and get back to work. So I think we're going to take that approach, get back out into the woods, get back into the research, and do some things that I really enjoy, love doing, and just bringing myself closer to the subject. Little odd synchronicities of life, right? There's Henry. Henry's back. He's moving. We have some life, signs of life. And look at that, a sign of life for Vance, too. That's a good sign here.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have another Forker filibuster show where it's just me.
Well, I think the thing with you, Forker, is you have so many stories. I think the thing is that a lot of times, like, because you and me talk in the truck like you wouldn't believe, like, especially if I haven't seen him in a while, it's like I'm just bouncing like one idea over another. He has so many stories. It's just, I think a lot of time with you is, where do I start, and do I give the complete story? Like, I'm a burst kind of guy. Like, I make things. So I'll draw like 4 pictures, and then I'll go, hey, Sean, what do you think? And then he'll look at 3 of them and go, this is neat, burn that, and then I'll re-look at it and go, okay, I like his neat, I'm not burning that. But I think with Sean, a lot of times it's just he can't, like, he's worried that it's not going to be perfect, where if he just spit it out, people would be so amazed. Like, it'd be like a Christmas story. Because there's so many things that we've done that I get credit for. True. And I'm like, I'd have never left the couch if he wouldn't have told me we were leaving at 2:00. Like.
All right.
No, but I mean, 25 years of this research alone, the last 15, JB, you've been along for the ride, and last 18 years, you've been along for the ride. There's a lot of stories, collected stories, a lot of research, a lot of, little things that make for this great stories of things that happen in the field. And that's not even counting the investigation. So there's so much to go off of. It's just, how do you translate that to the page, and how do you get that in a way where I do care about the quality of product we put out. Sometimes you might not tell by, what you get, but I do care about the quality of product. And when it's not up to my levels, Bake's right, I get pissed and I get upset, but it's only because, these people that tune in, that listen to us, they deserve it. Right. And we've got a lot of stuff going on. I know I say that every week, but we've got watch along still. I mean, there's so much to do. It's also getting the time to do it. And we all know that we're losing time more than anything else. And we're losing Henry more than anything else tonight too. We've lost him like 20 times. So hopefully he'll come back. Now, Sasquatch Unearthed the Ridge, last episode turned out yesterday. I sat down today and watched the entire series from beginning to end. I have a hard time watching something I'm a part of, because again, Bake goes, you critique yourself, but it was a good program. They did play my sound recording that we got in Keystone State Forest.
Yes, and
they did it in a really good way. I've never said what that was, because we don't know what that was in the woods making that sound. Right. But I can tell you it wasn't my echo.
No.
And if you go to the end part where they're playing that clip, the frequency of its repeat is really close, but it's also, I change my timbre and my tempo. That stays consistent. So it's one thing I was always, thinking of. Maybe it was reverb or echo. The other thing is, maybe it's a damn cow in the woods. Like, I'll never understand it, but it was just one of those things that leads credence to the strangeness of the ridge in that whole area. I did like the episode where they start talking about subterranean Sasquatch and using the caves and stuff. Something
Cave
we've thought
systems,
about
right?
for a
Right.
long time. And Pennsylvania is just loaded with mines and cave systems, so a lot of place to hide. And I even make the point that we sometimes talk about this creature being able to appear at whim and disappear without a trace. Well, maybe it knows entrances to caves that we don't know, and
Right.
maybe it's not paranormal. As we have the paranormal question tonight. Maybe it's just a natural phenomena that has a much better access to that we know of.
Yeah, that's true. And I've been playing tug of war with the whole paranormal thing for a long time, and that's why I said I just have to break away from that and either go paranormal or flesh and blood. Just choose one and start your investigating there.
But does it have to be an absolute? Like,
no, it doesn't. No, not at all.
And
if
I
the
tinkered
evidence
in
is
that,
overwhelming, then you can lean the other way. Sure, absolutely.
and I've dabbled in that realm forever, where
Right.
I've consistently stayed flesh and blood because that's what I
Right.
truly believe this thing to be. But
Right.
there are things that happen that I just can't explain. And
Well, in Unearthed, it just ends, and there's no trees
Yeah.
or anything for. I don't know how you explain that. I just don't.
no, and
get it.
Stan has talked about that several times, where there's these tracks of footprints and they just stop,
Right.
and there's
Right.
no exit, nothing. So
Right. No trees, no
how
nothing. So
how do you explain that? It's not going
Right.
to moonwalk back out of there.
no, at least not
No,
that
but
we know of.
Right. Absolutely.
But that falls back to my two criteria with most of this. It's
Mhm.
either hyper intelligent or it's myth or it doesn't exist.
Right.
I mean, we could say supernatural and still be hyper intelligent.
Mhm.
But the
Sure.
thing is like there's no way that as a culture, and I kind of watched the movie Gargoyles the other day, the old classic one from like 1970s, really great movie. But like they explained how these things survived millions or hundreds of thousands of years and we didn't notice them, and then when we did notice them, and how they kept it secret. But that's because the creatures were born hyper intelligent.
Mhm.
They knew how to hide their dead. They knew how to do this. They knew how to do all these things. If it's not hyper intelligent, and it could be supernaturally hyper intelligent, okay, then it doesn't exist. Because if it was as stupid as a bear and a deer and a duck and every other animal you can think of, we would find bones everywhere.
Right.
You would find
To an
unique
extent,
hominin.
yes. Yeah.
But
to
you
an
would
extent.
find a random, like a bear will come in, like my video camera that I have on my door shows
Mhm.
me that there's bears in my town where there should never be, but because we're encroaching, they're coming in to
Right.
get food. You would have the same thing if Bigfoot was just an animal. If it's just an animal and lives off pure instinct of, food, chicks, somewhere to sleep, okay, you would find evidence so much. You would find, oh, hey, there's poop. Oh, hey, there's some bones. Here's this other stuff. You would find
Mhm.
things. But if it's hyper intelligent, it's be able to remove its tracks from the system in a way, then you have to work on it. Now, being hyper, it has to be hyper intelligent compared to, because if it was just a stupid animal, even if the government was covering it up, no offense, somebody randomly would have found one that wasn't willing to take the money, and would
Sure.
leak it at this point.
Yeah. No, I think you make a good point with that. Somebody inevitably is like, yeah, you know what? All the money in the world's not worth the fact that we have this amazing scientific discovery. I'm
Mhm.
not motivated by money. Here's your Sasquatch,
Mhm.
Yep. I downloaded the video of watching two of them in the woods, and and there would be more evidence.
Well, and I go back to that, footage we talked about when we had David Wilbanks on the show, that video from Oklahoma,
Mhm.
where that gentleman had, all these cameras outside his property, and you could see the shadows moving around. Like it's a perceived shadow. It's probably a figure. I call it a shadow because there's not a lot of definition. But to me, that proved an intelligence and how it's able to move and kind of evade and keep itself hidden while still being able to get from A to B. Definitely. I don't just because, and again, just because something's an animal doesn't mean it has to be a stupid animal.
No, we're an animal and we're pretty damn
animals,
intelligent.
right,
Look at where we came from aviation in such a blink of an eye in the human timeline. Okay, well, maybe Sasquatch is hyper intelligent, like Bake is saying, and guess what? Maybe they're the ones that are building these things from resources of the earth. Who knows?
Well, we talked about how we went from flying wooden planes to jets in like 50 years, right? Like that was an amazing,
yes,
yeah, but that was an amazing.
Here we're putting
leap.
a man on the moon from the first flight of the Wright brothers is insanity.
Yeah.
On how quick
they say if
by.
the Dark Ages would have never happened, we'd be on Mars now.
Well, it's a good point. But why do we have to be the only ones that have the superior intelligence? I guess we don't know that.
Insecurity,
actually, but I believe when they talk about animals, like dolphins are smarter than we are. Mm-hmm. They communicate on such a different level,
right?
But they are smarter than we are. So just things like that make you wonder that maybe the problem isn't perception as it is there's no real fundamental way to communicate,
right?
Or that they're existing in a way that we just don't understand. Some people say, Portal, you talk about something being able to shift its vibrational frequency, right, and phase in and out like that. That's science fiction shit right there. But that doesn't mean
it's not plausible.
It's not plausible. We just think it's not possible because we don't know how to do it, or we can't do it yet, right? Human hubris, Vance. Because humans haven't figured out how to do it, it's not possible. It can't be so. Rather, it's we go into the UFO phenomenon, ability to travel faster than light, or interdimensionally, because we can't do it. It can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a lack of imagination.
Okay. Is a real quick point. We talk about intelligence, and there's intelligence that really hasn't been researched as much on the surface of this planet, such as plant life. There are plants, or there's one. I'm going to use one in specific, but this happens throughout the entire. But there's one specific plant, I don't know the name of it, but it actually mimics the way it grows a hummingbird to attract a hummingbird to feed the nectar to pollinate it. How did that plant ever know what a hummingbird looks like in order to shape itself to look like a hummingbird? What? Okay, so there's an intelligence somewhere that we're not able to pick up on yet. And maybe Sasquatch is just that totally bizarre, different realm that we're not able to pick up on yet. Another is insanely intelligent and has capabilities that are mind-blowing and what its capabilities are. So there's avenues that we just can't comprehend yet. And maybe in another 50 or 100 years, we can start to comprehend it, but to capture it, I have no idea. So.
No, and you make, a fair point
different there. Variety and aspects of life, period. Just life within itself here on this planet.
I mean, we have no clue of percentage of all the sea life. And the fact is that there's parts of the ocean, our own oceans, we haven't explored. There's pockets, there's pockets of the ocean that are so that we're not meant to explore just because we weren't created for that kind of depth. But there's things down there that are surviving in the dark and no one knows. To
the point, I think it's only 5% of the ocean we've mapped.
Yep.
5%.
Yeah. And the earth is covered by, exactly.
75% water.
It's incredible to think about how much of our own world we haven't explored. And, even parts of I don't remember the statistic, but there's parts of the Amazon that we've never even touched yet.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been able to go that far in.
As far as researching, correct.
Yeah, researching. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
right.
you think about that in other places, other countries don't have the same infrastructure we do, where it may be easy for us to drive to Montana or drive, to a place to get to the wilderness. That's not always the case in other countries, in other
Plus, their
continents.
borders. You cross a border and you don't belong there. You don't come back.
Yeah,
You
really, particularly over in Africa, you go out in some of
Mm-hmm.
those places. John Kirk's been over there to look for the Mokele Mbembe,
Mhm.
and you get into the wrong political
No, right?
section out there, and you're screwed. You're
Or
done.
you
And you're
just don't
gone.
look right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just a reality of the life we're in. So all that stuff really impacts, our ability to explore and discover. And when we talk about, creatures like Bigfoot, we think about just Sasquatch in North America, but think about that in the other countries and the other stories they have. Was it like in 1996? I think they had talked about the billy ape, which was an ape that got to be about 6 foot tall and could break the neck of a lion.
Mhm.
And that was really undiscovered and just part of folklore until they got it on video.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened in 1996.
Well, what was it in Africa? They thought the one ape was endangered, and then they found out that they all were living. There was like 50,000 of them living in an area that nobody could get to. It took them like 2 days to get there. Well, they were
Right.
thriving because we were leaving them alone.
Right.
How much of the swamp in New Orleans and all that those places that takes
Mhm.
2 to 3 days to walk in. How many things are living there that we're saying don't exist, or somebody. I've always had the theory of the escaped ape or the creatures that don't belong. Vance comes home with a spider that mom don't like, so she lets it outside and it meets up with another spider, and now they're living in the woods, and nobody notices till there's a tribe of 50 of them.
Well, and how often is that happening now? We're seeing it with more than probably ever had happened in the past. Bob writes some good reports from my area, Derry and Apollo, Bigfoot and UFOs at the same time. Yeah, Bob, you're down there in Westmoreland, Derry.
Mhm.
That's where I got my sound foot clip that you can listen in Sasquatch Unearthed the Ridge. Just one of the last couple episodes. Derry is just crazy. Apollo, and in the 70s they had the UFO Bigfoot flap, which you go into Stan Gordon's books. Man, you really go down the rabbit hole
Yep.
of
You sure
high
do.
strangeness. Henry, talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit, would you?
Yeah, Sam Gordon looked into these reports of these supposed Bigfoot UFO flaps, which
Mhm.
were going.
Damn it. I didn't want to step on him in case anybody's listening. But Stan Gordon investigated that, very thoroughly in the 70s. They had the shapeshifter story from Westmoreland County. A lot of it is very much cataloged in Invasion on Chestnut Ridge. And as you go through Sasquatch Unearthed from Small Town Monsters, I'm just shilling Small Town Monsters right now because they really do a good job at fleshing out that story and telling it in a very visual way. I think folks will get a really good appreciation for the rich history that it has. Go ahead, Henry. You're back now.
Well, anyway, there was a huge flap of supposed Sasquatch UFO reports, and there were some strange happenings that occurred in that area. Like, for instance, a lady who said she shot a large hairy creature and the creature disappeared in a flash of light.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's creepy.
Or the oftentimes the Sasquatch is seen holding orbs, orbs of light. That's happened several times.
But don't we chase fireflies and catch them? Okay, maybe these orbs are something unrelated and they catch them.
We've had that discussion about maybe it attracts them. Or maybe they understand the orb more than we do.
Maybe it's its device that it uses to
live.
I don't know. You could tell I get uncomfortable talking about this. I don't know, because it just gets so fantastic. And could we use some sort of paranormal topic to explain everything? The answer is yeah, we could. And to me, that's kind of easy. But it doesn't mean it's not the case, and when you have all these stories and, the entire 70s, 80s, 90s to 2000s still of these reports of high strangeness, how do you ignore them? How? And as a flesh and blood guy myself, man, it really strikes at a nerve, like, because you can't deny this is what's being observed by people.
Oh, very true.
It is 25 after. We do got a break for the news, guys. And we come back, we'll continue this discussion. Sean Forker, James Baker, Vance Nesbitt, Henry May, somewhere in the ether. We'll be back right after this. Stay tuned. Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
This is the Sasquatch Experience Stranger Than Fiction News. And here we go again. I know I did this story about a year ago, and yet once again it's happened in Ohio. Officials in Ohio County said 2 escaped emus were rounded up this week, but another emu remains on the loose in the area. Highland County Sheriff Donnie Barrera said the deputies worked together with the owner of the 2 emus to get the flightless Australian birds back to their enclosure. Seriously, I think Liberty Mutual is really missing out on a golden opportunity here. Liberty, 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 liberty. Anyway, Barrera said a 3rd emu, which does not belong to the same owner, has been on the loose since mid-November. The emu has been reportedly spotted in the Hillsborough area and was caught on camera walking down the middle of a busy road in one of the earliest sightings. Locals said the emu's origins are a mystery. No, it's really not. They come from Australia. When we come back, Bigfoot sightings in New York State. What? Oh, there's a shocker. Nothing new to see here, folks. But we'll talk about recent sightings out of New York State.
You're listening to the Sasquatch Experience.
Your body wash is
but I like it.
The goo needs to go. That junk is for kids. It's time to become a man with Dr. Squatch. Natural, nourishing, handmade soap for men.
Whoa!
We grow up so fast. Dr. Squatch gets you energized to take on the day. Transports your shower and drives women crazy. For too long, men have been showering like boys. Ditch the boring generic bar that makes your skin dry and sad. In the real world, you need real soap made with real ingredients. Like shea butter, coconut oil, kaolin clay, and sea salt that clean, lather, and exfoliate better, leaving your skin smooth yet strong. When you shower with Dr. Squatch, you unleash epic aromas like pine tar and bay rum. Go to drsquatch.com today and join the millions of satisfied men that have made their lives better with Dr. Squatch. Real soap
For real men.
like father, like son. Feel like a man, smell like a champion.
So, out of Mayville, New York, resident Peter Weimer, not Wiener, Weimer, told WGRZ that he's heard from 45 witnesses who claim to have seen the Sasquatch in the area around Chautauqua Lake. I went to school with a girl named Chautauqua. Nah, I just made that part up. Chautauqua Lake is located 60 miles south of Buffalo, New York. There's 100 more witnesses in Chautauqua County that aren't talking to me, Weimer told the TV station. According to WGRZ, Chautauqua County is packed with dense forests and deep gorges. Is it wrong for a man to visit another man's deep gorge? Why, I think not. Meanwhile, in Whitehall, located in Washington County north of Albany, New York, has also had a large number of Sasquatch sightings that led to it being dubbed the Bigfoot capital of the East Coast. In 1976, multiple witnesses, including local police and New York State Trooper, said they saw a man-like sized beast standing over 7 to 8 feet tall and covered in hair, similar to the famous 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film. A blurry photo from a Whitehall trail cam in 2010 is among hundreds of reported Bigfoot sightings across the state. A blurry photo. Really? Now, Whitehall has its own Bigfoot event, the Sasquatch Calling Festival, with a competition for best Bigfoot calls to attract the elusive animal. Yeah, 'cause that'll work. I'm sure many of you in the community have seen footage of the Sasquatch Calling Festival, and if you don't have a migraine by the end of day, well, then you are definitely a good squatcher. But Bigfoots have been reportedly sighted in many other places, including Washington State back in 2020, keeping hope alive for enthusiasts all across the United States. And to a different subject altogether. All of us here at the Sasquatch Experience would love to extend our condolences to the Gottfried family and their friends for the passing of Linda Godfrey. Not only was she an amazing researcher, but a talented author and artist in the genre of cryptozoology. She was a wonderful friend to all of us. Godspeed, Linda. You are so missed.
And we're back, folks. Vance, thank you for that wonderful segment.
You're welcome.
Going to Whitehall. Now, you know that Sasquatch calling contest. They had one of those in Marionville in June.
Yeah, it gets a little carried away.
Again.
No,
there's some different
carried away.
calls out there, that's for sure. Something special, a little something for everybody. James, you
bring a
remember
Tylenol with you.
Yeah, that's an Excedrin right there. Welcome back, Henry. Good to see you. Happy to have you back with us. Hopefully you can hear us. Again, paranormal question, right? Is Bigfoot a paranormal entity and paranormal being? Well, I mean, the answer is we just don't know, and it's not something we're going to solve in this episode, but we are going to talk about it. But before we get into it, I want to read something. Lon Strickler over at Phantoms and Monsters posted an article, and Henry, Vance, and Baker, you'll get a reason why I'm reading this. Deer vanishes just before driver strikes on US 23, Ohio. An Ohio man recalls an experience that he had while driving on US 23 approximately 8 years ago. A large deer crossed in front of his car, and as he braced for impact, the deer suddenly vanished. A person wrote to you about a deer on the road in Ohio on Route 7, not far from where I am now. Route 7 runs along the west of the Ohio River from Chesapeake, Ohio to north to East Liverpool, Ohio. That deer disappeared on him just before he hit it with their car. Well, I'm here to say they're not crazy, and neither am I. I never told the story to anyone, but now I have reason to. I was driving on US 23 on the Kentucky side of the Ohio River near Portsmouth, Ohio, heading home from a friend's place at around 1 in the morning. I crossed back into Ohio because the Kentucky side of the river is what I like to refer as no man's land, with only one small town and one red light between the bridge where I crossed into Kentucky and the bridge where I crossed back into Ohio. I was quickly on the highway in the lonely darkness at around 70 miles an hour when a full-grown deer walks right out in front of the car. US 23 is a 4-lane highway with a guardrail in the center. Where that deer came from is beyond me. I was facing the cliff side of the highway. I didn't see it jump the rail, and the other side goes straight up a cliff. A lot of crap goes through your head in a split second when something like that happens. You're thinking, oh shit, my car is totaled, and I'm walking in the dark. I braced for impact, and just as I hit the deer, it vanished. I thought, what the hell just happened? There's no way that deer went underneath the car. There was no thumping underneath, no smashed up car. And as I said, a lot of quick thoughts came because my mind was just looking for answers. Anyhow, I hit that deer solid right in the center of the car, but there was no damage. None. So I got home and went to bed. The next morning I woke up and I was thinking I had dreamed about the crazy incident. It had to have been a really vivid dream. So I walk out and looked at the front of the car, and there was deer hair stuck in the grill. So that proved that it wasn't a dream. Was it my guardian angel looking out for me? Did the deer go into another dimension? I have no clue. I just know it was there, and there should have been a wreck, but instead, it vanished. My grandparents who grew up around here were very superstitious. They told us stories that were hard for outsiders to believe. Maybe they weren't that superstitious after all. That encounter happened approximately 8 years ago. The world is a lot stranger than most people know. So you guys know why I read that story to you.
Yep.
Anytime there's a story of a vaporizing deer or a vanishing deer, we're on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
because we experienced
some residue, we experienced
Well,
it.
yeah, he just used the wrong V word. Instead of vanished, it should have been vaporized.
Well, and again, the only evidence he has of this thing is that it left some hair
Right.
on the bumper. In our instance, we saw the bumper fly up over the car.
Yep.
And the lady just kept driving.
And no trace of deer. Nowhere. Other than spray. That was about it.
But then the more people we tell this story to, the more people say, "Oh my God, that happens all the time." And I'm like,
Where? Why aren't we talking about this vanishing or exploding or vaporizing deer phenomena? But there's just another story about that. So we start talking about this paranormal element to the Sasquatch, right? And, how many times, if we asked ourselves the question, why haven't one of these been hit by a car? And there's been some stories where they have been hit by cars. There was
trucks,
a very interesting, there's a very interesting story in Pennsylvania where they, I think Eric Altman investigated it, where they claimed to have hit a Sasquatch, and he went out and there were some fine like hair striations on the car where it looked like something was hit, but there was no, viscera, no blood, nothing.
Extreme
besides
damage,
that, a little bit of damage. So you have to ask yourself, what happened? Obviously something was hit, but what happened to it?
Right.
And that's interesting because now you have a kind of a story about it. We all know deer exist. We've either hit one, eaten one, like we know deer are real, but this one just decided on its own it's not going to exist in this space-time continuum and took itself out of the equation. Like that.
Thanos snap.
Right.
Like Q just snapped his fingers and it all. But so is it without reason to think that this is something that maybe isn't that uncommon to Sasquatch? Maybe the reason why we don't get reports of them getting hit by cars more is that they have this ability to phase itself in and out. And as you start reading other people's books and you start listening to other people, Henry, that ability to phase in and out is something that's talked about.
Like in They Live, they had the little watch that made the hole and they just disappeared.
Right.
I love that movie.
That movie still
Roddy
messed me
Piper.
up. Obey. Consume. Vance, I just don't know, man. What paranormal what paranormal trait does this creature exhibit that makes you go,
Well, stump is the UFO connection. I guess one story that sticks with me is from the NIDS investigator at Skinwalker, and the two investigators were on night watch and they saw this orb which turned into like maybe a portal light, and they saw what they described as a humanoid creature, very large, step out of this light and make its way off into the woods. And now these guys are there to research, to find out what is going on. And I don't think that was just a made up thing. This is something that they had evidence of, because they had cameras going, and then the way the cameras kept getting manipulated constantly. I don't want to turn this into a skinwalker story, but just so this thing climbed out of this light and then disappeared into the woods.
Bizarre,
That's
isn't
what holds
it?
me up
And
with the
and
whole
again,
paranormal thing. Yeah.
But we hear those stories, at Pennsylvania through that, again, going back to the 70s, the stories like that aren't uncommon. But, you talk about that area out there at Skinwalker Ranch, right? And that whole area is full of, some sort of paranormal goodness. It's very rich and story and, mythos of, really nobody knows what the hell's going on out there, but it is a very well studied area. And they put a lot of time and energy into it. But again, how do these things get places? Like, is there some sort of vehicle that they do get around in? And is this one of those vehicles what we consider to be a UFO?
Right.
Maybe
Well,
it's
just like
their
the case
craft.
in Pennsylvania, what with the big red orb UFO that landed in the farm field, and the son and farmer, I believe, went out there.
Yeah.
Dad fires off a tracer round, and these creatures walked along a fence line and then turned around and walked back.
Yeah,
The police report stated, the ground was still luminescent after this thing was gone, that they could read a newspaper by the luminescence coming off the ground. Okay, well, something clearly happened there, and here he's shooting at these bipedal hairy creatures. So I just don't know what to make of all of it.
And you ever wonder if they got soil samples from that place?
Well, this was quite a while ago, so I don't know if they did or not.
Yeah, well, it's a question I have now. It's a question I guess I'll throw to
Bigfoot
Stan
related,
Gordon.
where they took soil samples after a residual light was coming from the ground and found that the soil had become aquaphobic. I think, is that the word, where you can't pour water and it soaks into the soil? It just doesn't. It repels the
They're
water.
saying
it
it
off.
that way.
Right. And that's what they got out of the soil sample, but all the soil around the area absorbed water with no effort whatsoever. So
it's almost like whatever touched that soil
yes,
changed its chemistry.
history, exactly. So it could not go figure.
Well, again, we had Dwayne Pintoff on the show once upon a time, good friend of mine. And Dwayne, happened to see what he swears is a portal to this day open up in front of him and close. Like, he's a good guy. I know Dwayne. How do I tell him he didn't see what he saw? And how does that relate to what we do? Well, it's in an area of high Bigfoot activity. Like, people are seeing something. Right. And if I'm willing to accept that they're seeing an upright hair covered creature that's not supposed to exist, why do I have such a hard time with the concept that maybe it has extra normal abilities? It's not exactly fair, right? But it's where I'm stuck. It's there's that line of fantasy and that line of reality, and Sasquatch Bigfoot skirts that line as it is. And I always feel that, and maybe it's a presentation point, guys, that when you start layering a mystery on top of a mystery to start solving questions to the mystery, you're not solving anything. You're just grasping for straws to prove the fantastic. And that's where I'm stuck. Like, from a presentation standpoint, it looks really bad and it looks weak when you do that. That's where I'm at with it. It's not very logical.
John Green said he didn't feel anything, there was anything attractive about explaining one mystery by bringing in another one.
And
right.
Again,
right.
We can all trace our lineage to a researcher that we, have followed and kind of, latched onto, and John Green was my guy, so I'm in that mindset that, this is flesh and blood, because that's what was comfortable. I've worked with Stan Gordon for years. I've worked with Eric Altman for years. There's so so many more viewpoints out there. It's just, again, I've explained my rationale behind it. I don't have to go on. It's just why I have a hard time with it.
Mm-hmm.
James, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Well, it's one of those situations where, so I don't know if anybody watched the Netflix show Troll. The one
Not
gentleman,
yet.
well, if you get a chance, it's really good. It's action adventure and a large creature that kills things. It's pretty good. But parts of the movie is there's a guy that learns all about him, learns the lore, learns everything about it, and he's so close to an answer. And then there's a secondary group that kind of puts him away for a while. He's crazy, things like that. And the thing is like, as the movie evolves, you realize he wasn't crazy. Yes, he was intense, and yes, he could come off as crazy, so it was easier to put him to side. But the fact is that as the movie evolved, you realize that most of the stuff he wrote about was semi-factually true, and that, and I think that what happens is that we have all these great people looking into it, and they see their side. And as you said, is if your research is based on, you want it to be everything you've read is flesh and blood, then you start pointing I don't say you manipulate the evidence, because I know that they're not intentionally doing it.
But you're biased, right?
You're biased. That's right.
Yeah, there was a thing about cultural bias and things like that. There's biases that you bring with you that you don't even realize are biases. You're like, like I put sugar in chili, and people go, "Why would you ever do that?" And I'm like, my family's always done it. It's a great thing. And then if I get you to try it, you're like, "Oh my God, why aren't I doing this?" Try sugar and chili. It's worth it. Okay. But the point is, it's the same with these people that are like, it must be an alien. Well, no matter what you show them, they will find a way to link that to an alien evidence. Same with the flesh and blood people. It's like this, where like me, like my whole concept is it's either hyper intelligent or it doesn't exist. So every piece of evidence I get, whether I tend to or not, falls into box 1 or box 2, which, unfortunately, no matter how good of a research you are or how bad of a research you are, eventually you slowly have like 2 or 3 boxes that every piece of evidence has to fall in.
Right.
Because that's what you're comfortable with.
You're compartmentalizing it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're sorting
because
it
makes
through.
it easier for you to deal with. Like, okay, there's no bone, so maybe it doesn't exist, or it's smart and it buries its dead. There, I just box that and then, go from there. So I think in the long run, we're never going to have, as sad as it sounds, we're never going to have 100% answer on any of these cryptids till one, either we get hyper intelligent that we're on their level, that they decide to, one day walk out of the woods and go, "Hey bros, we've been here forever. We just didn't talk to you because you're stupid," or that somebody on a country road hits it. Well, they always talk about, I was having a discussion with my dad today about aliens. And I was like, honestly, if aliens really wanted to subdue the earth, if they didn't need the people, there's like 5 million ways they could kill us from space and we'd never get a shot off.
Right.
Sure.
They can chuck a meteor at the ocean and then wait 5 days for everything to subside, and they've got a perfectly good planet.
Yeah. Keep talking. You're making great points, and unless I have to talk, so you're on a roll.
Okay.
Keep going.
Sorry. Well, and that's where it all comes down to. It's like we had the discussion about Loch Ness. I think Loch Ness Monster is the most amazing idea, but the problem is that how can there only be one that we've seen for hundreds of years?
Right.
There has to be a colony. If I've learned anything, what is it? There has to be at least 15 couples to make a viable genetic something like that. I think Star Trek taught me that one. Well, it was the one where they tried to clone Riker, and for some reason Riker wanted to make his own clones. He didn't want somebody to do it for him. Kind of like Captain Kirk. But the fact is like you can't have just one Nessie.
Yeah, you have to have a population.
If it's an animal,
right? A breeding population. Right.
So, if Nessie exists the way we see it, we have to suspend some realism. Now there are other Nessies that I guess, in other parts of our country and other countries. But like, if that's the only Nessie in Loch Ness, then it's not plausible at all. There can't be one. That's like if you saw one Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, there can't just be one Bigfoot in Pennsylvania. Unless it goes to Georgia over the weekend, pops a couple out, and then they go to another state. There's still got to be a breeding population.
Yeah, just add
It's like
water.
a giant mogwai.
Right. You know, I've often wondered about, Bigfoot screams. Maybe that's a female giving birth.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's been reports of people stumbling upon a Sasquatch giving birth. So we know from eyewitness report they have a birth, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was watching again. I watched Small Town Monsters, and there are some people that are very fervent and that very much believe that these things have a 50-mile range and they don't go outside of that because it keeps it within the breeding population and their home territory. I mean, whether I agree with that or not, it makes sense to them.
But don't we do that too?
We do it too. You're right. So why is that outside the realm of possibility? I don't know. So part of that, bias we talk about, I think even though I've had a sighting of something, I've had audio recordings, I've had, experiences. I think there's still always that part of me that's going to have doubt until we have something to, lay out on a table and say, there it is. And then if we do that, will we even learn if it had any kind of supernatural paranormal ability?
The other question is, if they have one laid out on the table, will we ever really find out that actually happened? Because,
true. And has it happened? Has it happened already? That goes into the government conspiracy, and that's a whole show on its own because there's a lot of. Actually, I think next week we'll talk. The next show we'll talk about that. We'll talk about government
the conspiracy theory. Okay.
Yeah, and because there's a lot to that, right? The Battle Nevada, Battle Mountain, Nevada, where they had that fire and the Bigfoot was burnt, and we'll go into all that on that program. But Baker, you brought up the point at the beginning of the show. There's no bones. One thing I find odd is, there's CSI and we find human bones all the time. And sometimes those remains have been there for years. At some point, I think we have to acknowledge that we have either already run into Sasquatch bones and they've been collected, exhumed, and are stored somewhere, or these things do something with their dead that is, maybe very much like what we do, but in a different type of way.
Right.
Because at some point we have to run into the bodies. Like we have all these cadaver dogs that are out there searching. Have one of them stumbled upon something?
Right. No.
Would we be able to tell the difference if it was only just a couple bones from a Sasquatch to a human, maybe besides density?
Right.
We don't know. And, but that's the scientific part of it. That's not paranormal. That's just the scientific part of it that, a physical evidence. How do we prove the non-physical part? How would we prove something phases in and out of its? Does it leave some sort of residue or some sort of signal or some sort of trace element or something behind that we could prove, or radiation of some sort that we could prove that says, hey, something just phased in and out of here, like that sand, Vance, from that encounter. It completely changed the chemistry of the sand in that one area. The makeup of that sand was changed. Would there be some sort of evidence, some trace evidence left behind that would amplify that, and it would give us the potentiality to say, hey, this is weird. Other animals don't do that. Bear don't do that, but this thing did.
Right. And you make all valid points. And the thing is like, I always have the argument of because I'm learning so much from being outside more, like little things, like, like I notice when there's a new animal trail, or I notice when there's a new whatever, it's the same as if Vance, if somebody in your backyard move something, you would know, maybe not right away, but subconsciously you would be like, hey, that wasn't there before. Because I've gone up to my land, and even Forker's gone up and goes, hey, Baker, did you do something over here? Because this is completely different. Or we actually had a weird encounter with a poacher. And I noticed as soon as that thing came back, but like I couldn't prominently remember if it had always been there or it hadn't been. And even Sean was a little doubtful of the tree stand. Yeah. But like
that tree
we
stand
put signs around it and it hasn't moved and it hasn't whatever. So now we're watching it. So if you look at it from an animal's perspective, especially during hunting season, you know, they may be, like I said, if they're intelligent, you know, they're like, okay, all the humans are in the woods for the next 3 months hunting bear and deer. Let's hunker back into our hiding area, or let's go camo, you know, and whatever. So like same with like places where, you know, you say, well, this is a heavy research area. Well, maybe that first week you might see something, but if the creature is intelligent, it's going to go, okay, I've had 3 busloads of people with cameras. I think we need to move upstate a little bit until they go away. And then when they see us up there, we'll come back. And that's why a lot of times, like me and Sean will revisit somewhere that no one's been there for like 6 months, because then you might actually see something because, like I said, if it's hyper intelligent, it's smart enough to not go back in that area that it had a problem or it saw that somebody moved its, you know, barbecue or whatever.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point you make. If once it's observed in a spot, why would it go back if it knows it's already been seen there? You know, why would it go back? Especially if it's a, you know, more frequented area. Why would it continuously go back and put itself at risk? I don't know. Let's something else strange too, Baker. When you and I were out in the land a couple weeks ago, putting up the signs, something was out there walking with us, but we couldn't see it. There was clearly something out there walking, but for the life of us, I searched that area tremendously and couldn't find anything that would explain the footfalls we were hearing.
In the conversation.
And at one point,
somebody was talking.
At one point, James and I thought somebody was having a conversation out there. Couldn't find it. But James, why don't you tell them what we learned?
But were we catching echo from at the bottom of the hill? Were we catching, you know, there were so many things. Like,
tell them what you learned about the land, though, the land next door.
So the guy, somebody bought the land next to us, and now they were putting signs out and everything like that. But you could tell the difference of where they were and where they weren't. Yeah. And now I noticed that there were more movement, there was more things like that, but you still didn't really like see anybody. And maybe they were only 50 to 100 feet away, but all you could hear is traces of that. Now think of that in a wilderness area that's miles, you know, like you're making noise and maybe I have good hearing. I can hear you half a mile away. I've got so much sponge in between, even though we both can hear each other, there's no way I'm going to find you unless you want to be found. You know,
I was talking more along the lines of the Native American battle that happened there.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So the land next to me was going up for sale, and the guy, I was talking to my neighbor, and I said, I really want to, I'm thinking of buying this to just expand one more lot so that I don't have any more neighbors, you know, because I don't like people. Yet I work in customer service. Go figure. But so I found out that whole region was a Native American battle site. There were artifacts and bodies and all kinds of things. And my neighbors tell me, oh yeah, he goes, all the land up in here, he goes, all of that was one big, they lived there. There were some huge battles and things like that, you know. And he's like, yeah, there's probably, he goes, you probably go to dig a pool or something like that and you'll find whatever. And I'm like, great. I probably am cursed now. That explains why there's all this weird stuff going on, you know.
Why couldn't we find a source to those footprints and those footfalls? The conversation we may have heard. Can't identify any of it, but there we are. Strange, isn't it? The paranormal question.
That is.
Absolutely.
Over there. Yeah.
And we haven't even
Bake,
touched
one final thing. Bake,
Yeah.
one final thing. I put sugar in my chili too.
I like it. It especially if it's got like a spice to it, it actually
it
like
works.
evens out the spice.
Not
and
a
gives
lot.
more
You
taste.
just put a little in.
Cuts the acidity of the tomato, right?
Yep.
That's what
Because
we
people
learned.
put sugar in spaghetti too. I've seen that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Henry, you put sugar in anything down there in Mississippi besides everything?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
You put sugar in your chili? Henry?
It's a ponder.
Hmm?
It's a pondered question.
Do you
put sugar in your
do you
chili?
put sugar in your chili?
No.
Oh, there you go. So one
Are
thing in
there- is
Mississippi
there-
they don't put sugar in.
Is there beans in your chili?
There isn't mine.
Yeah. I will
Okay,
put.
well,
I do like chili beans. Yes.
Some states
There
you
you
make chili and you throw beans in it, they kill you. Okay, you know.
And there you have it, folks. The paranormal question and a chili
Beans.
recipe from James Baker. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Next
Yeah.
week, we're going to go into this a little bit more or next show, because we didn't get into the spiritual side of this at all, Native American legend side of this. And then we get into the government conspiracy. So we got some shows lined up for you folks. Some couple bonuses coming up as well. We got the holiday watch along. Got a lot of things coming your way. The Patreon for as little as $2 a month. You can support Sasquatch Experience and the Snowflake Liquor James Baker up there. I'm done.
Hey,
Folks,
it was
tell them
like
where they
the
can find
flood.
you.
That's what they did.
Baker, where can folks find you?
Usually I'm standing next to you when something bad happens. But just find
Yeah,
him, you'll
that's the
find
truth.
me.
Vance, where can folks get you?
Taco Bell.
Vance,
Yeah. I
where can
missed
they
that
find
one.
you?
They can
Where
find
can they
me. Yeah. Well, go to Instagram. Just look Vance up. You'll find me. Yeah, you'll find me.
Vance,
Yeah.
Vance Nesbitt. Follow us, Sasquatch Experience, Twitter. Yes, we're still using Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm Sean Forker. I'm my name everywhere. You can go ahead and find me on social media.
There you go.
I've been going on an adding spree, so don't message me weird shit. I'll block you. But if you want to talk, we're there. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Again, programming is what it is. We're coming back at you. We love you. Thank you for supporting us here at the Sasquatch Experience. Henry, give them those final words, Henry.
In 3, 2.
I'm not
1.
there.
You're not there. That's not the words.
Henry.
Shit.
What?
Anyhow, as Henry, what say? Your final words, Henry.
You.
I don't know. We lost it.
B.
Anybody else?
Y'all
anybody
be
else wanna
good
give it a
or be
shot?
good at it. There it is.
All right. We'll see you next
Y'all
time,
be
folks.
good. Or be
Keep on.
good.
Keep on squatching.
You've been listening to Sasquatch Experience. Please rate and review wherever this podcast is consumed. To share your experience, visit us on Facebook or email us, squatchexperience@gmail.com. Keep on squatching.